Good morning, grand risings to you all. It is Monday, the 24th of March, 9 a.m. GMT. Thank you all for being here. Busy, busy, busy in the comments, just the way we love it around here. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you all. I really, really, truly do. And how are you? How was your weekend? I don't remember much my weekend. I think I slept quite a lot this weekend. Very exhausting week last week, but all good. Welcome to Wake Up, the show that has no clue what is going on under the pyramids. But seeing as a ton of you have sent in emails asking me, I shall make it my business to explore this week and report back to you. What is on Wake Up today? I'll be joined by a politician, AHMED, who's going to be updating us on what is going on with Yemen. Of course, there were airstrikes, there are issues to do with Iran, Israel, and more. And we're going to get a good inside look on what is taking place. And why has Twitter/X suspended geopolitical journalist Warren Thornton, a regular around here? And he'll be joining us to tell us exactly why. And we'll also be joined by broadcaster SACHA War. She's going to be talking to us about what's colloquially known as the Essex boy murders and how that links to Leah, who sadly died, and then further on to former pop star Brian Harvey. More about that later. And parole confessions, the Stephen Lawrence murder. Don't get me started, people. And Bristol livable cities. What the? Under cover of darkness, they installed barriers. They are ghettoizing the city under a Green council. And you sent me quite a few emails about it. So you know they're up to no good, because why install them under cover of darkness? More about that shortly. And in the UK, abattoir torture. Are we really a nation of animal lovers? And a UK school scraps Easter. Well, we all know that's a bad idea, right? Bad idea, whether you're religious or not. Just don't do it. And toxic, Disney's Snow White. Oh, my days. Talk about bombing. And final thought, advice for your young self. And I want to carry on from what we were talking about on Friday. And it made me rethink some of the things that I was saying on Friday about the advice I would give to my younger self. And I realized that actually I've got a different message. Abster is a vegan. And just to be clear here, right? And that is, I'm a vegetarian. I do desire to be vegan. I'm poor vegan at best, but I'm vegetarian. And I don't judge people for eating meat, because I ate meat for a very, very long time. But I also can't stand this whole kind of pious, we're a nation of animal lovers. You don't eat anything you love, mate. Anyway, we're going to be just discussing that shortly. And I just want to say this, and that is, we do news differently around here. And you know why? Because someone had to. Someone had to. Yes, indeed. And good morning to Michelle. Michelle's one-stop healing shop said, grand rising, beautiful souls. Absolutely sun shining in air today. Lucky you. If I don't catch live, I'm always catching up on my favorite online broadcaster show. No idolize, just love. And love to you too, Michelle. Love to you too, Poppet. And it was an extremely busy week last week. And what it's reminded me of is how much I enjoy doing outside broadcasts. So I'm definitely going to do more, because I enjoyed the spontaneity of them. And the feedback from you, our viewers, has been absolutely tremendous. So my aim is to do at least one outside broadcast a month. So here's where I turn to you. And that is, if you have anything going on in your area, either on a Monday, potentially Wednesday, or a Friday, let me know. And if it's kind of outside broadcastable, suitable, I'll be there. Let me know about it. And I see that they are absolutely desperate and determined to nail German Christian Bruckner for Madeleine McCann's disappearance. It's absolutely ridiculous. Thank you, Craig, sending me the headline in the Sun. Maddie case fears, major Madeleine McCann update as cops rush to charge prime suspect Christian Bruckner before he's freed in days. Of course, he was acquitted of rape. And so he's due for release quite soon. And he is the so-called prime suspect. And the newspapers are telling us that a meeting has been convened in order to discuss charges to be brought against Christian Bruckner for Madeleine McCann. What now? I'll believe it when I see it. And the thing is, if it happens, I will know that they finally got their patsy, because I will put money on it that Christian Bruckner did not take Madeleine McCann. It gives me no great pleasure to say that. It just is what it is. Good morning to you all out there. How are you, Simon Poppet? How are you, Simon? And before we bring in our first guest today at 10 past, let me talk about a horrible, horrible crime that impacted the UK. It was the racist murder of Stephen Lawrence at a bus stop in April 1993 in Eltham, southeast London. It had a huge impact on the UK and policing. And the reason that I want to talk about it is because this piece of David Norris is now up for parole, and he's up for parole because David Norris and Gary Dobson were two men who were eventually jailed for the murder of Stephen Lawrence, or at least being there and being involved in some way. And now he's up for parole. He's suddenly saying, oh, actually, I am admitting that I was there at the scene when Stephen was killed. I hate people we all know I hate racists anyway, but I hate absolute cowards like this. He's waited all this time since 1993 to at least give the Lawrences some insight into what happened to their child. And the only reason he's doing it is because he wants to get out. So let's talk a little bit more about that. The fact remains that this killing still haunts the UK, and mostly because all the people responsible have not faced justice. And but there's still so much more to this story. Duwayne Brooks, Stephen's friend who was with him and who they attempted to murder when they murdered Stephen, said from the beginning that there were 6 males involved, and the 6th one, which is Matthew White, interesting name, was categorized as a witness rather than a suspect. Duwayne said he never saw a knife in the attack on Stephen, but he saw a scaffolding pole. And at the time, White was a scaffolder. White, who is now dead, went on to have a continued absolute wasted life, a heroin user. He was caught shoplifting from Lidl in Eltham, southeast London. I think it was 2015. And he attempted to stab another black man with the needle of a used syringe while using racial slurs. And he told the man, I will kill you. I've done it before. Nothing will happen. And an ex-prisoner who spent time with White after he was jailed for that attack told police that White had said that the police had failed to properly investigate him and that he admitted to being part of the attack on Stephen. White died in 2021, age 50, and frankly, the earth breathed a sigh of relief. And I believe Duwayne Brooks. He was there, he saw the men involved, and he has always maintained that Matthew White was present and probably leading the charge in many respects. And it wasn't only a racist attack, by the way. It was a racist police investigation. Police treated Duwayne and Stephen, who died at the scene, as the perpetrators and not the victims. The problem from the beginning was that the police literally saw 2 black men, one dead, one who had fled, and said, well, they must be the problem here. That's what happened. The Macpherson report came out as a consequence of the racism shown towards Stephen and his family, including the Lawrence family even being spied on by the police. And the Macpherson report concluded that the Metropolitan Police was institutionally racist. The other problem, of course, was that David Norris's dad, Clifford, was a known London gangster and was with rumoured ties to the Metropolitan Police. And one of the bravest pieces of media coverage that I have ever seen in my entire career as a journalist was this: when the Daily Mail put 5 of the thugs on the front page and said, the Mail accuses these men of killing. If we are wrong, let them sue us. And guess what? They didn't sue the Daily Mail. So in 2012, 2 of these men, David Norris and Gary Dobson, were jailed for Stephen's murder. And as I say, David Norris is now up for parole. And suddenly he has admitted to being at the scene of the crime, but claims he did not wield the knife. And the parole board has made these disclosures as it agreed a hearing on freeing David Norris should take place in public. Oh, yes, it should. Norris's minimum jail term expired in December 2024, and he's now set to be considered for release on licence. As part of the background to the case, the parole board said Norris had continued to deny the offence after his trial, but he's changed his story. But the parole board said he does not actually know. Actually, it was the parole board. The parole board's vice chair, Peter Rook, said that David Norris, he does not accept he holds racist views. Well, yeah, I appreciate that, but not all of us get together in a gang and kill black teenagers. And he talks about how he has PTSD. I couldn't give a flying fig. I want these people to exit the earth ASAP, right? People like this, they They breathe toxicity into the environment. We don't need them. And I don't care about his PTSD. He doesn't want his hearing held in public. Tough. Absolute tough. And the board disagreed and approved the request by media, supported by Stephen's parents, to hold it in the open. And I'll tell you what, if the public can actually be there, I will be there. I want to be there. I want to be there in the front row, and I want to look at him, because this story really, really impacted me. It's devastating that so many of these people got away with it. They literally got away with it. And the irony is, the great irony is that even though the police stereotyped and demonized the two young black males were not only better educated than the 6 white males, but they actually had like futures to look forward to. I think Stephen wanted to be an architect. These were intelligent young men who were attacked, and one of them was taken out by these idiotic, useless, kind of draining thugs on our streets. So no, I don't think for a second David Norris should be freed. I don't know if anybody saw a Channel 4 documentary, which was undercover, which showed the brutality of these thugs. So yeah, it really did impact the UK hugely. It really did. And yeah, so don't free David Norris. That's what I have to say on that. Let me bring in my first guest. Hello, Warren Thornton. How are you?
Hello, Sonia. How are you? I'm very well, thank you. And yourself?
I am very, very well, thank you. And but here's the thing, Warren. For those who don't know, Warren, he's a regular around here, geopolitical engineer. I was just going to call you geopolitical journalist. And the thing is, Warren, I went to your Twitter last night because I always like to keep up with what you're saying, whether to bring you on the show or whether to quote you, because you're one of the finest geopolitical journalists out there. And I couldn't find you. So I went to the inbox. It said I couldn't send you any messages. And I was like, what? Wait, what? What happened, Warren?
Basically, we got suspended halfway through our news show, and we were highlighting a very, very strong fact, which of course has now been borne out with Kaya Callas having a massive row with Sanchez of Spain after the meeting, trying to give more money to Ukraine. And what we actually found out, along with many other people who have found this out and been taken down, I was asked to look into it. We looked into it, and we found that 174 accounts have been shut down on X. Now, the reason for this is that Kaya Callas has spoken at a meeting of a very highly funded USAID organization called NAFO. Now, this is not the North Atlantic Fisheries Organization. It is an online bunch of trolls. They're called North Atlantic Fellas Organization, or they call themselves main BASTARDs, and also they have a symbol of a dog. Now, what they are is Kaya Callas, Ben Wallace, the former defense minister, and Adam Kinzinger of the US Congress has also spoken at one of their meetings. In fact, when Victoria Nuland had a conference in Vilnius in 2023, just as the, shall we say, the Ukrainian summer offensive was failing, they had their own conference just down the road. And indeed, Kaya Callas spoke at that conference. Now, what we found out about these gentlemen is through various Facebook posts, and we were actually in the middle of exposing this on X, that they are actually, these people are raising funds for the Azov battalion, which are the neo-Nazis that basically are in control of Ukraine. And halfway through the show, we were taken off Twitter.
So here's the thing that I find really curious. You were literally taken off live. Somebody was watching you, right? What's that?
Yeah, exactly that. So what we were actually exposing were these people, and of course, there's either X is in on this because there are 174 other accounts that have been taken down for exposing this, or very simply, there is somebody in the X organization who is banning anybody, because what happens is first you get a mass reporting by NAFO of your channel, that literally coming online onto your page. Of course, our team reported these people, and of course, X just wrote back saying they haven't broken any Twitter violations whatsoever. They actually posted a picture, tried to post pictures of my family, would you believe?
Oh, that's
Yeah,
doxing. And
yeah,
the thing is that Craig, Somerset Squirrel, makes a good point. Not somebody, Sonia, but Big Brother AI. So it's probably programmed into the system, isn't it? That as soon as you start talking about anything like this, to take you down. And
yeah.
Stephen Hall is absolutely right. He says Musk talks about free speech. What a joke! It is not free speech on Twitter at all, is it? That's the reality.
No, exactly that. But it's not going to stop us because, of course, we have warrenthornton.com, which they can't take out. And that's specifically the reason we're on Rumble and we're on Kick and we come on your show and we go on. And as Mark Cousin says there, once you're over the target, yes, they do come for you. And it's not the first time they've come for us. With the same thing happened with the Nazi in the Canadian Parliament. So very, very simply, when they talk about the far right, nobody wants to be talking about the EU's backing of literally neo-Nazis. So it's quite staggering.
And the fact that you found 174 accounts, right? That in
Yeah.
itself is extraordinary. What is going on out there, Warren?
Oh, well, it's very, very simple. The EU are pushing a massive war agenda. You have to remember that the EU have had a minerals deal in place since 2021. Now, hardly anybody talks about that at all. And of course, Starmer has signed a deal, Macron signed a deal, Zelensky signing a deal with America, and Zelensky is basically offering up minerals to anybody who's willing to listen. But there's no question that these people have already had that deal in place. And in fact, Kaya Kallas tried to get another 40 billion to Ukraine, another slush fund. And of course, that was blocked by Hungary. And of course, Sanchez of Spain decided to tackle her about it afterwards, after the meeting. And of course, Sanchez of Kaya Kallas literally turned around and said, "What am I here for if it's not to funnel money to Ukraine?" And that was actually overheard in the European Parliament's corridor.
Talk to us a little bit more about Kaya Kallas's role, because some people aren't familiar with that name. And I think you can give us a little bit of more of an insight.
Yes, well, Kaya Kallas's father was a very, very solid stand-up gentleman and quite a bright politician in Estonia. And then Kaya Kallas took over. She ran the country into the ground. She's very much had, shall we say, her great-grandfather had all sorts of connections. So we say the same as Ursula von der Leyen and, of course, Annalena Baerbock. His grandfather was a dyed-in-the-wool Nazi who sent people to the gas chambers. Now, of course, Kaya Kallas is very much anti-Russian. She's absolutely hated them ever since she was a small child, because, of course, should we say, they weren't persecuted, but they were held for their crimes that the family committed quite a few years ago during the war. Of course, Kallas has always carried that with her. Now she's risen up, of course, as you do. If you are completely useless at running your country, you get a job in the European Commission. That's always how it worked out. Von der Leyen was the same. And Annalena Baerbock is now being put forward as a UN exec, shall we say, to help out the UN after running her country into the ground. And of course, these women are very, very highly placed inside the EU. And Kaya Kallas is one of these absolute Russia-phobes who wants nothing more than war with Russia. In fact, the other day, she turned around and said the only way to restore peace to the world is to make sure Russia is wiped off the map.
Wow. So, so here's the thing. I know that you've appealed, right? Is it a suspension or a ban? A suspension? Is that the same thing?
It's been suspended. We've appealed 15 times. We've yet to hear anything back whatsoever. We actually put an appeal in every single day until it's lifted because we want to know the reason why. So Elon Musk or whoever else is out there, if you're listening, we'd like a valid reason why we and 174 other people have been taken off the air. And it seems we all have a common denominator. Now, it seems either you're in bed with these people or you've got somebody inside your organization that they're able to use to actually stop anybody talking about this. And what is really, really important to remember here is that Kaya Kallas here has definite links. I mean, she is a huge fan of these NATO people, and they get funding from USAID, George Soros, the EU. And of course, the original was run by a Polish gentleman who's about as, should we say, neo-Nazi as possible. And we have actually published pictures of them actually asking for fundraising for these people who are carrying out all sorts of horrific war crimes inside Ukraine and inside Russia.
You've actually, this morning, you've mentioned rather a lot of neo-Nazis, actually, as some people are pointing out to me in the comments. And that's what we're dealing with largely, isn't it? And so what we can do, or if you're on X/Twitter, then perhaps what we should start doing is tagging in Elon Musk and asking why Warren Thornton has been suspended and to have his account reinstated to Sweet. Please do that, people. I will happily tweet and retweet with you because it's completely wrong. It's completely unfair. This is supposed to be a marketplace, but in fact, we now know that X is highly politicized, isn't it, Warren?
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing that is very, very strange about this, of course, is when you look deep in to the European Commission's amount of money and the USAID money, and of course the UK aid, and of course many, shall we say, almost 1.6 billion has been sort of forced into Ukraine media, and 90% of the Ukraine media that's supported by George Soros has received funds from those three organisations.
I think this is an interesting comment. Some plug said, funny how some recent events can be painted as don't look back in anger. He's talking about JFK files, while some focus on 100-year-old events to whip up hysteria. And he is talking about Holocaust because Ben Shapiro, I'm kind of diverting slightly here, but I think it all plays into the same thing because it's all on
It
X.
does.
Ben Shapiro, of course, was banging on about, what's the point of all that? Well, Ben, obviously leading Zionist, as we know, does not want people to look at the JFK files and the fact that it points largely to Israel. And that's really also what we're dealing with as well, isn't it? It's a lot of cherry picking that's taking place on X at the moment.
Yes, exactly that. What you have to remember, we every time anybody criticises Zelensky for what he's doing, and of course he turns around and he says he can't be a neo-Nazi, he's Jewish. Well, so was Reinhard Heydrich. And of course, his records were changed to say that the whole family was Roman Catholic. But of course, then you look at how many of those actually went to Israel and various other places, shall we say, after the war and managed to get asylum. And of course, Operation Paperclip saw tons and tons of neo-Nazis working in conjunction with Zionists to help set up the state of Israel. And of course, Israel, every single piece to do with Israel has been redacted from the JFK files. If there's nothing to see, Sonia, why do we need it redacted?
Right, exactly. I mean, I think it's so interesting how, like, the first round of so-called release of files, you had all these kind of cherry-picked right-wing Christian influencers, and now suddenly they're all incredibly quiet about the JFK files, and it absolutely is to do with the Israel connection. And just to be clear around here, I am literally not biased about anybody, but we have to face the facts and we have to face the truth. And that is, for some reason, there is a great deal of protectionism around Israel. And why is that? Why is that? And also around Ukraine. And it all appears to be all centered around globalism, though, Warren, because obviously Israel and Ukraine have nothing in common other than the globalists, presumably, that gather around them, unless you see other connections.
I do see other connections.
Go for
it. Very, very simply, inside Ukraine, there is a various airport that's received a lot of money from the Israel lobby to be rebuilt. And of course, they have a huge temple to a rabbi there in the Ukraine. And of course, many people from Israel, should we say, take pilgrimages to this actual shrine, to this literally Israel rabbi, should we say. And of course, they have received lots and lots of money to completely upgrade the airport. In fact, over £5 million was received from the Israel lobby to do so.
Right. It's deeply concerning, isn't it? So what now? What moving forward? Obviously, as you say, we can still find you on Rumble. We can find you on warrenthornton.com. We can find you here. But what for this week? What's on your timetable?
What's on my timetable is, I will reveal this to you, Sonia. I have spoken to two people from the military, very, very high up indeed. Starmer, he's having to backtrack, and the reason he's having to backtrack is the simple fact that the army have turned around and told him that it's a completely unworkable presentation to try and put troops in there. There is no end game. Literally, the military can see no advantages to doing it. There's no thought whatsoever of what they're going to actually try and achieve. And the Admiralty have been even worse shall we say, on Keir Starmer. This is why he is not going to be talking about anything to do. They're dismissing it as political theatre. So our friend in naval intelligence has turned around and said the peacekeeping initiative that was proposed, there are no concrete details of what troops and equipment have to be sent. He has got ahead of himself. There is no defined military end state or military strategic planning assumptions. It's all political theatre, and with this being total politics, there's no military sense to it. He added that neither the Russians nor the Americans supported the coalition, which was being led by the UK, and cautioned that the coalition talks were complicated by the fact that nobody knows what the mission is and hardly anybody wants anything to do with it.
Warren, I think to a degree, I'm going to theorise with you, but who is Keir Starmer answering to? Because he's not answering to the British people.
No, he's answering to the World Economic Forum, aka BlackRock. BlackRock already have 400,000 hectares of land that they have bought from Ukraine. And remember that the EU also used BlackRock for most of the banking. And of course, BlackRock manages trillions of dollars worth of assets. And of course, you must remember the old adage: only politicians, bankers, and arms dealers ever win a war. Everybody else loses, either financially or, should we say, physically.
I really always appreciate your insight. I'm very angry that you've been suspended from X. It makes no sense other than the fact that, you know what they say, Warren, you're well over the target. You must be over the target. I mean, because otherwise, and I say this often, that is nobody breaks into an empty house. So if you have nothing to say, nothing of worth, and you're not influencing anybody, they would ignore you. And that is the reality, is that they came after you because you were saying something that was resonating somewhere and it was problematic. Warren, we truly appreciate you joining us this morning. As ever, it's Warren Thornton, everybody, geopolitical engineer. Why am I keep saying engineer this morning, Warren? What's going on? You weren't an engineer in a previous life, were you? I don't know.
You've got cloud seeding on the brain. That's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. Warren Thornton, everybody. Take good care of yourself, Warren. Lovely to see you this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And Warren, of course, is a very regular favourite around here. And the fact that he's been kicked off X is absolutely outrageous during a live stream. I think that says rather a lot. Cheers, Warren. Says the Blue Nomad. Go, Warren, says Adele. Thank you, Warren, says hope, love, and peace. How are you all in the comments? Randy says Europa gave all its weaponry to Ukraine. Now we have to buy new. But worst of all, we do not have the soldiers. We do not. And thank you to our mods as ever, of course. Crazy Bunny has returned today. She's been very unwell. I don't know how much she wants to say about it, but I do know that she did make some of it public. So I'm sure we're all right to say a little bit of it. But something to do with her mouth, toothy pegs. How are you, Crazy Bunny? I said to you, teeth problems are some of the worst because they impact your whole body. I hate toothache. I literally do, because it's like your head and it just takes out your whole body. So welcome back. And of course, our lovely Soul Sound is here as well. Hit the thumbs up, guys, says Public Notice. Indeed, indeed. I want to welcome in our next guest. Need to dissect that KFC advert. Do we think it was made to be controversial? Marco, what KFC advert? Because something is kind of ringing in my mind about that. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. What's going on? Benny said Europe used up all its old stock and are now modernizing their armies. Yes, with your kids. Right, let us bring in our next guest. And here he is. Good morning, AHMED. I think you're there. You are AHMED TUHAIF. Good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Sonia. It's a place to be with you. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for Wonderful Monkey on X. She caught you on a space on X. She said, this man knows what he's talking about to do with Yemen. He would make a great guest on Wake Up, and here you are. Thank you for being with us. As I say, lot of activity overnight. Obviously, we've heard the US and yesterday and over the weekend, US airstrikes on the Houthis. At least 53 dead. Please tell us what's going on in Yemen. We hear so little about what is taking place over there.
Oh, well, thank you for having me again. So basically, the situation is very, very complicated in Yemen, the political situation. But let's talk about how it affects actually the international businesses and the international politics. So basically, we have this group, what they call them Houthis, and they are supported by Iran. They actually start launching missiles and on the the international shipment route, and they're starting to use the Palestinian problem as excuse, and and so they had a lot of time to get a chance and stop with to fix the problem with a political solutions, but they would never listen. Basically, they took control over the capital of Yemen, Sana'a, in 2015, and they led a coup against the government. They got it down, and since then they start uh, having a very big connection with Iran, and they have a big supply. They're receiving a very big, huge supplement of weapons from Iran, and starting attacking Saudi Arabia, and then they end up attacking shipment way in the Red Sea. So it is, yeah.
It is. You're absolutely right. They attacked the shipment in the Red Sea, and they were saying that the claim was that it was showing allegiance with Palestine, to my understanding. And they also are saying that their actions are designed to pressurize Israel to stop. How is that going, do you think?
Not at all. It's not working, and it won't work. Basically, they add in another numbers of Yemeni people, Yemeni innocent people, because what American doing today, it actually has to be done. Somebody has to do it, and unfortunately, a lot of civilians would go as a victims. And I don't know how effective it's going to be to the group themselves, to the Houthi themselves. But at the end of the day, somebody has to stop them of doing this. The Yemeni government, the what we call them, the Yemeni legitimacy, and they don't mean nothing at all. And they just stay in Riyadh and Saudi Arabia since 10 years. So this people and this group they come from a tribe from the mountain, and it's really hard to find them. At the end of the day, we may just reduce the problem they're causing in the Red Sea, but I don't think it's going to stop what they are doing for the whole time and forever. So yes, but they can't stop. Actually, I don't think they need to do anything with the problem of Palestinian and Israeli, because we have in Yemen so much bigger problem, and we still have we are
Right.
we have so many problems in Yemen. So yeah.
So what I'm interested is, because obviously out there, what we're talking about is like three main groups, which are the resistance. You have obviously Hamas in Palestine, then you have the Houthis, you have Hezbollah, and they are seen obviously very much as the enemies. At least one of them is a proscribed group in the UK, and we cannot promote in any way because it will be seen as illegal. But what I'm interested in knowing in terms of the Houthis is, how representative are they of the Yemen people?
No, absolutely no. So I just want to mention something very important. So we cannot connect the Houthis with Hamas and Hezbollah as a result of did Iran created the Houthis? No, Iran created Hezbollah, created Hamas, yes, but is Iran supporting Houthis? Yes, and this is the only thing in common between Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas. But if we go to Houthis, they are different. They've been there. They're actually using Iran, and Iran is using them at the same time, because the background, they've been ruling the north of Yemen for almost 1,000 years, and 1,200 years. I mean, 1,200 years back in the time. So what they're claiming, they said they have to be the ruler of the country because they come from a family of a Prophet Muhammad. So this is what they are claiming to do. Do they present the Yemeni people? This is a very complicated question, because a lot of people you need to understand the situation in Yemen. Yemen are actually not one nation. We have South Yemen and North Yemen. I'm from the South Yemen. So the fight started in South Yemen. It only took the southern people 3 months to kick out the Houthis from all the southern geography, or the southern land. Only 3 months, and there was no more one Houthi in it. Well, because we have a little bit different beliefs, we have different culture. We cannot accept any kind of extreme related to religion, politics, and this problem. So yeah, that we succeed in the south to kick them out, but in the north is another problem. It's mix of tribe allied and some of them, they believe actually in what Houthis believe because it's been there for over 1,000 years. But if we talk about the majority, no, they don't actually present the majority. There is a big amount of people actually supporting, and they represent the Houthis. But I cannot say they 100% represent the Yemenis, especially in the north. But if you go to the south, not at all.
Understood. And what we often find with the resistance is that they are a controlled opposition. I'm not suggesting that here. It could be the case, it might not. But because it is often the case that the globalists have actually financed the so-called resistance. But that's not the case here.
Oh, well, yeah. Let's say we need to remember one more thing. So what the Houthis have more than Hamas and Hezbollah, they actually took over a country that was being building for 33 years. After the Yemeni united in 1990, before that date, Yemen used to be two countries. So every kind of weapons and every economy we have after 33 years, they lead a coup in Sana'a in 2015, and they got control of everything. So they have a lot of resources, and they still have, we're talking about a very, very long borders on the Red Sea. They still have supply all the time from Iran, and they have actually some establishment inside the country and even outside in Iraq. And believe it or not, they have some people supporting them even from the United States, from Europe, from everywhere. So yeah.
What about the UK's involvement? What can you tell us regarding that?
So the UK is playing a very important role because the UK and the United States as well are, two countries of the squad who's actually had the file of the political file, after the International Council 2216, what do you call it? The order of the International Council. So yes, the UK, I think the UK is playing a very good role actually in the in this complex in Yemen. From the first day in 2015, the UK has a point and believe that there is no way we can resolve the problem with Houthis politically. It's a group of people, they only believe in weapons, and actually with the UAE, I believe the UK and the UAE, they lead the resistance in the south, in the southern part of Yemen, and it works. It works within 3 months. Within 3 months, there was no more Houthis in the south, and this is how the capital moved from Sana'a to Aden, and everything was fine in the south. But the northern side is still a problem until today. I think the UK can play much more effectively if we actually depend on the southern today. If we're talking about ground operation, that's the only thing would end with a real result and stop the Houthis of doing what they are doing. The airstrike won't be enough. It would reduce the problem, but it will never stop the problem. So I think building a good relationship with the southern would be very useful.
Tell me a little bit about your background and why this matters so much to you. You're a politician, right?
I am. Well, basically, I'm from South Yemen, which used to actually be a British colony for 130 years. And Aden is actually famous and known for we actually become one country with the North Yemen in 1990, and we noticed that it's not going to work because we actually both nations come from a different background and different culture. What I'm trying to say in the South is more open-minded. That people actually they just keep the religion and whatever you believe in the side, believe whatever you believe. It's so much like Europe, I can mention a lot of things. If we talk about women, they start working and driving very early in the 60s. And when we become one country, we start noticing a lot of problem with this nation, the northern nation. And we actually claimed to go back to countries, but we couldn't make it. In 1994, they declare a war against the southern, and actually we being called non-Muslim and disbeliever because there were some bars and we used to sell alcohol in the south, and so they declared this war and they start collecting people. You know, the Muslim Brotherhood and those Houthis, they ground this group. What we see today, they start calling for jihad against the south. So yes, it is matter for me, and every southern people are suffering since 1994. I need to mention that the south of Yemen, or what used to be called Public Republic of Yemen, present 75 of the land of Yemen and actually present 80% of the resources. And we used to be only 3 million people against 25 million people from the north. So yeah, it matters because we think our identity is being removed from, you know, our land and everywhere, and we are trying to go back to the normal situation, two countries.
Some people in the comments, and I must admit I agree with them, is they cannot imagine how any UK intervention in a situation like this can be a good and positive thing. Now, in terms of like your position, which side do you think you come down on? Because it sounds like you have a very westernized perspective on what is taking place. Is that accurate?
Well, it's I know more details than what we know in the UK. You know, I'm really into it. I know some things would sound like away from humanity, would sound like very rude, and would sound, but there are things had to be done. If we talk about what's happening now in the Middle East, for example, let's say what happened in Gaza between Israeli and Palestinians, like 45,000 people were killed somehow. This is something, but at the same time, we're talking about 600,000 people were killed in Yemen by Houthis since 2015 until now. So what I know for real and for sure, this problem will not end with a political solution with groups that actually believe they present God on this land, and there is no way to negotiate with them. There is no way you can um, make them understand the value of freedom, the values of humanity, the values of free choice. You cannot deal with them. They just say, okay, I present God here, God sent me. I know it's a very bad situation, but at this situation, I think what Mr. Trump doing, what the United States doing, should be more effective on land. So what we're gonna need for ground operation, and this is not gonna work even if we use American soldiers or British soldiers or even Saudi soldiers. It's not gonna work. The only thing is gonna work is what we actually already tried in 2015. Within 3 months, the southern people actually did it, and they take out all the Houthis from. I'm not here calling for war. You know, I actually think this war is necessary to stop the war. Is the endless war is happening in the Middle East. Exactly just what happened with Hamas and with Hezbollah. You can see how people actually are welcoming the new situation in Lebanon. And if you go deep inside what happened in Gaza, away from the media, they're actually trying to. Yeah, I'm not saying that Israelis are acting like angels there. This is something very horrible. But at the end of the day, is a result of a problem started with Hamas. No country would accept a terrorist group ruling next to, you know, in your borders, and this is what we feel it.
I mean, I again, I have to be incredibly careful because, as I say, Hamas is a prescribed group in the UK, so I can't say anything that would sound as if I'm defending them, and I'm not attempting to at all. But I always have a problem with anybody who seeks to present it that Hamas was the problem, because there was a whole lot of stuff that was coming from Israel before there was the need for the resistance in the first place. So you're not suggesting, like you say, Israel are hardly angels. When people say that, it generally tends to lend itself to the idea that the person is very pro what it is they're saying. So are you more on the side of the Israeli government than the Palestinian people?
No, of course not. But I go back in the history. So it's you cannot understand a situation if you just take part of it. So if the problem with the Israeli is Israel is, you know, the Israeli government is not accepting a Palestinian state, I would say no, this is not true. Maybe it is today, but go back in time, go back until 1940, who refused this were Arab, and in 1969, who refused it and were the Arabs actually, and it was some parties actually they have the same ideology of Hamas today, the Muslim Brotherhood. If we go with the British at the first time, when I think in 1940, when they draw the borders or the two states together, Palestinians used to have 60% of the land, and they wouldn't accept it because of the Muslim Brotherhood. So what I'm saying now, I know some bad things had to be done to stop endless bad things happen. I think no one can accept. It's not only about Israel. I'm telling you this now. Arabs, Middle East, especially Arab countries, they have enough of the radical ideology of Islamic extreme politics. Right. They're destroying every country. Okay, let's say, I'm going to say this for example, I'm not just making a compare that we have to accept what Israel doing, but what I'm trying to say, let's not to give Israel more excuse to keep killing people in Palestine. So they're saying Hamas is the problem, and it is actually it's a problem. Hamas is a problem. Maybe it's not that big problem but it is a problem. It can't be accepted not only from Israel, even from other countries. So only from 2011 until today, almost 5 Arab countries fall down because of extreme Islamic political parties. So we have Iraq is down, Lebanon is down, Syria
I take
is down.
that. No, I do take that. You only have to look at what's gone on in Afghanistan. and I absolutely hear that. And I talk to a lot of people and they say that the radical Islamism and that is taking place is problematic and they have to fight against it. My thing is the idea that people who are defending themselves against Israel saying don't give them any excuse for it, isn't that a bit like saying a woman who wears, I don't know, skimpy clothes deserves to be raped? Do you see what I'm saying? My point there is that the Palestinian people are under attack and under constant attack, obviously. I mean, how many deaths over the last week alone? And 50,000 deaths in total. So obviously it is absolutely problematic, no doubt. But I do absolutely take your point, because what you're saying is that first of all, you have a first person experience of this. I'm looking at it from the outside and what I'm seeing, and a lot of my information is coming through Western propagandists and those kind of outlets, right? So I'm obviously very interested to hear what is happening on the ground, how it impacts people. But are you representative, do you think, of a lot of people in the region, in that is they are sick of the kind of Islamic takeover? Do you think that is quite a widespread thought out there?
Yes, you can look, for example, to Saudi Arabia, how people are accepting the new system there, and everyone is happy with it, and we are improving even our way of life. This is a very huge, complicated situation when we talk about the extreme radical ideology of Islamic parties. We're not only talking about politics, we're talking about the style of life, the way we live, the way we walk, how we get married, how we raise our children. And I think before I look for the right of people, before I decide, and just care a lot about people, how they live, I think we should provide them the fair freedom of choice. Actually, you cannot raise a child as a bomb. That's what is happening now. And I just want to mention one thing. It doesn't have to be me like supporting Israel or supporting Palestine. I don't believe in this standard. So what I believe is we should supporting humanity for the fact of humanity. So we should condemn terrorists for itself, for the fact of. So I want to, but at the same time, I understand. There are some logic path we have to take some consideration. So I still remember what happened in Japan in 1945. When Japanese thought the American has powerful weapons, they wouldn't say, okay, let's die to the last one and we have to fight America at the end of the story. They give up, and Japan is fine today, no problem with it. So what Hamas is doing today, they actually can't do anything. Israel is a powerful country in the Middle East, and it's there to stay. They're not going to anywhere. So what I'm suggesting here, enough war. I don't care who's going to rule this region. I don't care who's going to rule the country, either Palestinian or Israeli. if I'm gonna end with a result that give human right and respecting everyone to choose whatever they want to be and however they want to live, just like we have here in the UK. I don't have any problem. I'm a Muslim, and I will defend the British value. I remember every day of my life, and this is how I teach my children. We cannot come from a country that we have no much choices and come, for example, to the UK. I have this conversation all the time with my friends. Trust me, I am just not a one like a lot of my friends. They stay away of me because this is what I always say. Why did you come to the UK, for example? What makes you come to this country, for example? Oh, they said because they have more choices, they have freedom. Okay, then you have to defend those values. You can't come to this country and start spreading the thought that actually take you out from your country, from the
Right.
other country
When
of
in
origin,
Rome, you're talking
Yes.
about, yes, you're talking about that attitude when
Yeah.
in Rome. Why did you come to the UK? Out of curiosity, is it because you want to embrace those values?
Well, basically, I wasn't a refugee. Okay, just to make that clear, I got married to a British woman, which is from Yemeni origin, and she forced me to move here.
Oh,
So I was actually yes, I was in Canada. I'm Canadian at the same as well. I moved to Canada when I was like 18 years with my family. My family was investing in Canada, and then when I got married, she just gave me some choice, and she said, "Okay, I'm just gonna live in the UK." And yes, well, when I say the UK values or British values, I'm not talking about British as a race or as a culture or
no,
something.
I
What I'm talking
understand.
here, I'm talking about the free world, the respecting of human being. Nobody cares what you look like, what your color is, and no, you can't. The right of children. This is the biggest problem in the Middle East. So this is why when you asked me first time about is the Houthi presenting the Yemenis, I told you it's a really hard question to answer.
Understood.
Even if we say like there is 100,000 people supporting the Houthis, do they actually know what they support? Do they have the chance to have a good education? Do they have the chance to see different resources of education, of information? No, they didn't. They're being controlled. They've been teaching. The education system has been stopped, shut down from 2015. And what you see there, taking children to the front line and poisoning them with thought that Allah is with you, God is with you. It's not going to stop.
Let me just look at some of the comments here. Free world, what a lovely concept. It is really, it is. Does he support Syria's jihadists? Where's that come from? Ahmed, do you want to answer that?
It's a silly question, but I will because jihadists are jihadists. Every kind of extreme is terrorist. It doesn't matter what it calls, Sunni, jihadist, Shia, Hezbollah, Hamas. The idea of extreme doesn't matter who's carrying it. It's a dangerous idea.
Got you. Lenticular Cloud said, I think Ahmed speaks from his own life experience with integrity. And I think that's important because we often everything is so polarized, isn't it? It's like you're either with us or you're against us. But what about the nuance? What about somebody who has a lived experience, who understands that they don't want to be dominated in this way, that they want to embrace the fact we're in 2025, not 1925. And I do appreciate that. I don't have to agree with everything that people say around here, but I do think it is important that people get to talk and get to share their own with their own worldview. Ahmed, before you leave us, what would you like people to know about your position?
I really would like to. I'm gonna say I left the true experience. Maybe most of the people in the West didn't live it. I left in the first world countries, or whatever you call them, in the other side of the world, in the poor countries. I was raised in South Yemen, and I know as a result, so we don't actually have to be, as you said, between only two choices, against
Right.
or with. We
Yeah.
can create something new. We can create something different. We cannot.
Right.
We don't have to stuck to this thing that is happening for years and years. And what I want to say, every human has can be exactly like you are, and you can be exactly like they are. If you put, what makes us different is the circumstances we live. Some consideration. So I think we should make our brain work by themselves. We don't let the media control us. We don't believe everything we see. Do some research. Look for history. History is very, very important, especially when you're talking about politics and about religions. What I'm saying, what I want to say to the West today, there is a lot of people, a lot of voices in the Middle East are rising up now, and they're saying no, enough, stop the religious control of our life. It has to go to an end. So it would be really, 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 it would be really helpful if we see in the West some people actually are talking about this and mentioning this. It's time to stop pointing to the bad things and to how people think, so wow, because they're Muslim or because they are this color or this color, it's not going to work here. The world today is like a village, is small.
We need to start breaking down those barriers. Those
Yeah,
barriers
yes,
are there to divide us, aren't they? You
it's
and I,
not going to work anymore.
you know, regardless whether we have a differential in our thinking on A, B, or C, you and I are human beings, and we need to start reaching out for each other's humanity, don't we? We need to do that. And we also need to be aware that we're being played from all sides as well. And my thing always is, just because I have to look at where the power is, and it is evident to me that in the Middle East, the power is not, for example, in Palestine, because obviously Israel is supported all around the world. The leaders, the globalist leaders, more support Israel than Palestine. Go on, what were you going to say? You were just going to say something. What were you going to say?
Yes. So you need to define the power in this point. So if you're talking about the power of weapons, yes, it's not with the Palestinian. But if you want to talk about the power of controlling mind, yes, it is with the ideological extreme Islamic parties still until today. This is why you can see a person, a normal person, wear some kind of bomb and goes. This is why you can see a party like Hamas saying, "We win." I don't know what they won. They actually saying in their media, I am following like everything they say. They say we won, and they actually are celebrating because they killed 1,000 Jewish, as they said, and in the other side they lost about 45,000 Palestinian, and they destroyed. You know,
it doesn't bear thinking about, does it, though? All this loss of life, it's just horrendous. And the fact is that you and I can plainly see that something has to change, because we're just repeating the same cycle over and over again. And all of these people, innocent people, are unnecessarily dying. Ahmed, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. I truly appreciate it, and for articulating it so well. I think that your perspective is important. It might not necessarily kind of like, in fact, I think it's quite different, because it's quite a nuanced perspective. And I think that's what's needed. Anyway, listen, Ahmed, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Ahmed TUHAIF, everybody. Take good care of yourself. Have a lovely week, Ahmed. Take care.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Thank you. Okay, well, quite an interesting mixed reaction going on in the comments. And I'm interested in first-person perspectives, people, as you know. And but I'm also absolutely aware that about the power dynamic, and one loss of life, whatever side it's on, is too many losses of life. But when I start to hear about 50,000 losses of life, and obviously the cutting off of water and food supplies and the killing of journalists, that appears to be coming from one way. So, anyway, it was his perspective, and I very much enjoyed it. And obviously lots of different and interesting. Jackie, who was one of Ahmed's main critics, is thanking him, which is great also, because we need to find some kind of place that we can progress from, because they've got us caught in like constant warring against each other, right? Constant warring. And thank you, Ahmed, a truth teller from his own world, and he's saying to us clearly he does not like the Islamification of everything. There you go. I'm not rude, Jackie. You're a forceful, wonderful, outspoken individual, and I respect and appreciate it. It resonates with me, and because I'm those things as well. So from one outspoken individual to another, I never have any problems with anybody disagreeing on live chat or agreeing, whatever position you're on. Yes, Phobel, he is Muslim. He absolutely is. And he just says he's sick of that rigid structure. Right. Clear my throat. I'm going to bring in my next guest. What a day it is. What a day it is. I want to, after my next guest, I want to talk about Bristol's livable cities and ask the question, why would they need to do these things under cover of darkness with police presence? Very weird stuff. And you gorgeous, glorious readers, I think I'm still on newspapers, you glorious viewers wrote in and you're not happy and you want to know what the hell is going on. Well, don't we all, frankly. Right, let us bring in our next guest. Let us do it. Here she is. SACHA War from iStream Radio, music promoter and broadcaster. How are you, SACHA?
I'm good, thank you, Sonia. Good morning. How you doing?
Really good, thank you. I'm so glad you joined us. I received a letter. Here it is. Hello, Sonia. I love your deep dives. Have you ever looked at the Rettendon murders, aka the Essex murders? Something was very wrong there. I never quite worked out how Leah Betts fitted into it all. Do you know? And was Brian Harvey kicked out of E17 to do with Leah Betts? Any clarity on this would be appreciated. Love, Jen. There's a lot of questions there, Jen. But the moment I read this, I was like, there's one person I can get on to answer this because she was there. She was literally, I mean, at the scene. I mean, that's the reality. SACHA, talk to us. A lot of this revolved around Raquel's, which actually became the in place to be in the 90s. What was Raquel's?
Well, it's quite interesting, actually, you say that. So, yeah, how I came into this is because I was a barmaid at Raquel's. So I was a barmaid at Raquel's in 1995. At that point, I was 21, Essex girl. I was working in the city as a reinsurance broker. And on a Friday night, I was working at Raquel's. And that was because I had been raving since 1994. So at the weekends, that's what I was doing. And to take everybody back to that era. So 1995 was my favorite year.
Was it? Interesting. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah. So I look back at it as my most fun year ever. I was 21 years old. The music, and I know obviously you with your music journalism. So the music at the time was Britpop, boy bands, and house music.
You're right.
And being 21 at that time and the explosion, and you know, it was a really, really, really great time for music. And it was where my real passion for music started. And Raquel's was actually my first job in Clubland. And I carried on in Clubland, even though I did some other things. That's been my main job, my role for the last 30 years has been with DJs, Clubland, parties, all of that kind of thing. So 1995 was a great year and we were having loads of fun for us. Obviously, there's loads of things going on in politics and blah, blah, blah. But as a 21-year-old, you're really not aware of.
You were living the life. You're at the center of this picture. You look proper happy, right? Like you're having a proper full-on good time, right? Which was great. You were free of like burdens of adulthood and everything. You were at the center of a very hot and cool rave scene as well. So all of those things were really fantastic, right? Really exciting to be around there.
Yeah, it was. I left home when I was 16.
Wow.
So this was 5 years later. And I'd actually just bought my first house. So I bought my first house, which is an end of terrace house on the second worst housing estate in Basildon.
Bless you. But still buying your own house, girl, at that age, that was phenomenal. That said quite a lot about your stockbroker acumen, I should imagine.
Reinsurance broker. Yeah, well, actually, it was this. I come from an estate agent family. My real name is Ellen Pyle. And so if anybody looks at my YouTube and my TikTok that's relating to this particular case, they will see me as Ellen Pyle because that is my real name. SACHA is my modelling name because I became a pastry model in 1998. So a couple of years after this, I became a pastry model. And actually changed my name because as soon as my name was put in the sport, I started getting loads of dodgy phone calls.
God, I'm sure you did, love. Somebody said, yeah, that was a great era if you were cute. Well, Sasha was particularly cute, actually. Obviously, we've seen that. So let me just give a little bit of background information on this. You say 1995 was one of your favorite years. Well, I don't think that could be said for the three men who obviously ended up in body bags. And so the Rettendon murders, as it became known, also known as the Range Rover murders, the Essex boy murders, it occurred on 6th of December 1995 in the village of Rettendon in Essex. That is like the stuff of legends and myths, right? We've seen the rise of the foot soldier. The series goes on and on Amazon Prime. They have so many rise of the foot soldiers, it's unbelievable. But that was a whole scene going on there.
One is Rise of the Foot Soldier goes to Ibiza. And I have to say, and I know there's a lot of people out there that feel the same as me, I wish Rise of the Foot Soldier would go to Outer Mongolia, to be fair.
Right.
Because it is a shocking travesty on the death of three guys that has been used by the media as a full sensationalist cash cow manipulation. Wow. And for whatever anybody thinks about it, because there is such a lot of confusion, and there is such a lot of nonsense been put out, and such a lot of sensationalism, that so many people, like your viewer that wrote in, are very confused as to what the hell actually has gone on, why everybody's still talking about it, why everybody still cares, and what's gone wrong here.
Right. And you're here to add some clarity to that. So these are the three men that we're talking about. This is Tony Tucker, right? Patrick Pat Tate and Craig Rolfe, right? Is that the three men we're talking about here? And they were very much part of the drug scene, right? Were they like kingpins?
So I would say a lot of guys wanted to be them.
Right.
Tony Tucker was living, and my dad actually sold him his house before he died and sold his house after he died.
Wow.
And that's where that estate agent family came in. So Tony Tucker was the leader of the three of them. At the end of the day, there were three lads. Now, they were talked about as three Essex boys. But when they died, Tony and Pat were in their mid-30s. And Craig was 26, I believe. So Craig was the younger one. There are some really interesting facts about these guys. Craig was actually born in Holloway.
Prison?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Didn't know that.
That was due to his mother going to prison for the death of his father. And she spent 18 months in there, but somehow got out because actually her boyfriend bludgeoned his father to death.
Jeez. So he came from a family of violence anyway. It's not a regular thing to be born in prison, obviously, certainly not Holloway.
There was some serious mummy issues, put it like that.
Yeah, I hear that. So obviously the story that we've heard is that these were three leading drug dealers supplying nightclubs around Essex, including Raquel's, where you worked at, right? They were murdered on a small farm track, and the murders obviously were the subject of a major police investigation, multiple TV programs about it, multiple, and the operation was Operation Century, that it was all underneath. So I want to introduce something else now. How was Leah Bett's name associated with this murder? Sasha, talk to us.
So these three guys were drug dealers in Essex, and they were shifting an awful lot of ecstasy, cocaine, and cannabis, basically. Now, what we have to understand is that the link that was talked about is ecstasy here, and ecstasy was being demonized heavily since the 1994 Criminal Justice Bill to stop raves. So we were 5 or 6 years down the line of serious revolution, explosion in acid house, and ecstasy being the drug of choice and the thing that everybody was doing. And when I say everybody was doing it, everybody, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you couldn't go clubbing in the 90s without people being absolutely bombed out on it. And for those overseas who are unfamiliar with this story, Leah Betts was an 18-year-old girl who actually died after taking an ecstasy tablet in November 1995. And it was believed that Tucker was ultimately responsible for supplying. Do you think that's accurate?
No, so it isn't accurate at all. So I did actually the same pill from the same hound on the same night as Leah.
Oh, did you? Goodness. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
Correct. And so actually, so the ecstasy in question is called apples, and part of the manipulation and the confusion in the public is that Leah Betts died from taking one tablet of ecstasy, which is completely incorrect.
Right. That is the story. That's the official story. You're going to crash it open.
So actually at inquest, it said that she died from suffocation of water intoxication.
Okay.
So what it actually was in inquest said that her brain drowned and her internal organs drowned from drinking too much water. That was what was said at inquest. Now, they said at inquest that she drank 9 litres of water in the space of 20 minutes.
Wow.
Now, that is not humanly possible.
Let's put this comment up. This is going to trigger you. I mean, in a good way, because the reason I brought SACHA on is because I knew she was there. I knew she understood what was going on. And like any of our guests, I like to have a good insight on something. Reba says, I remember our school called an assembly showing photos on a big screen of Leah Betts and telling us all, you will die if you take even one pill. It was that big. Yeah. People, I cannot underestimate how big the death of Leah Betts was.
So can I ask Reba, was Paul Betts at your school when you were shown that video? Or was it just the video? Because
is that Leah's dad?
Right. So Leah Betts' father was a ex-Met police officer. And his wife was her stepmother. And that was who was with her at the time. Her stepmother was a nurse and also somebody that was already campaigning against drugs before she died. Now, she was the stepmother because Leah Betts' mother, Paul Betts' first wife, had died 3 years ago at the age of 46 and suddenly dropped down dead at 46. So Leah Betts was a 17-year-old and she used to come to Raquel's. And the thing about Raquel's is the average age in Raquel's was 16, 15, wow. And it was incredibly groomy. Right. And so this whole story is, it is very heavily manipulated because the story of what happened to Leah was, in my humble opinion, specifically orchestrated to demonize ecstasy because this was part of a predetermined plan.
Wow.
And also the Essex boys' murders was to demonize ecstasy. The major link in everything is Murdoch's media.
Okay. And some people are saying this, some people are saying the scum in the comments, right? But so Murdoch's media was pushing this because why? Now, here's the thing. This is to be clear to everybody out there, anybody, do not report me to the police. What I'm about to say is not like promoted drugs. I go through this all the time, SACHA. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I'm in the rave scene and I've always been in the rave scene. It's always been associated with drugs. People not talking about drugs does not help.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And the thing is,
anywhere.
Here's the thing is that I took ecstasy once, right? And I'm already a tactile loving person, right? But what it did is it created it with bells on. So it was never hateful. It was never about people warring at all. It was about bringing people together. It was very much considered to be a love drug, right?
It is a love drug.
Right.
And that is the truth.
Do you think, is that why the demonization happened?
The demonization happened because the alcohol companies were losing millions and millions of pounds every weekend. Every weekend. Nobody was drinking. So nobody was drinking. They were even turning the taps off so people would buy bottles of water.
You're right.
Because nobody was touching alcohol. We didn't touch alcohol. Up until that point, up until 1994, I'd been a pisshead since the age of 14. I'd always been around alcohol. My parents drank alcohol. I'd grown up in pubs. I'd been drinking pretty heavily. And by the time I was 21, I was a pissed up Essex girl. I generally was. And I actually, and this is not me advocating drugs, the rave scene, the ecstasy scene, the whole culture saved me from that.
Wow.
It actually did. We went out and did one pill, raved all night and had an amazing time.
Remember this, when Grange Hill also promoted it, again, for our overseas viewers, Grange Hill was a leading BBC children's drama. They had a song, didn't they?
Just Say No, yeah.
So, right.
And so the Just Say No campaign, and this is why it is incredible. There was 30 people at Leah Betts's party, and she did not die from taking ecstasy. In my humble opinion, there was another drug given to her, and what was described as happened to her sounds like a completely different drug. And it was 4 hours after she took this pill, and we all took this pill. It was an apple. And there's an awful lot has been talked about these pills because they were pure. And when I mean pure, they were strong. Right? And you talked about the love. They were more love than you could possibly imagine.
Right.
So they were the highest high. They were amazing. You didn't need more than one. It was all good. Once you'd done one of those, everybody would know it. So don't tell me that Paul Betts and his wife were not realizing that absolutely everybody, the 30 kids at their party, at this 18th birthday party that happened on, for everybody that likes a bit of symbolism, the 11th of the 11th, 1995.
Interesting. Very interesting. So let me just get a chronology here, right? On the 11th of the 11th, 1995, Leah Betts was said to have took this and then died. And
right,
then...
so this is, let me hold, and this is to get it. So
no, but what you're saying is obviously at the inquest, it was about that she
didn't
taken
die
it
like that, though. And that's the key thing as well, getting these facts straight. So her birthday was 2 weeks before. Her dad decided to hold a party for her on the 11th of the 11th. She went into a coma at midnight that night. Then the police arrived. She was then taken to Broomfield Chelmsford Hospital. And then she was there for 4 days before she died.
Right.
She was in a coma for 4 days. Now, this is when it hit everybody, it was hitting the press.
Yeah.
Raquel's was still open. And so what actually happened, because we weren't online in those days, so it wasn't like us 21-year-olds were buying the paper and all of this kind of thing. So,
right.
So it's just suddenly going out that it's all got really on top because this girl's in hospital because she's taken a pill.
Right.
That's all we're all knowing.
Right. Got you.
We turn up to Raquel's for work on Friday night, and the whole world's press is there. Wow. And I mean the whole world's press, like Basildon Market Square, and you've got all of the trailers up the road, and it is literally like
it was everywhere, mate, everywhere. So why do you hold Murdoch's press more responsible than other media?
Because before she was even dead, for 24 hours, like literally 12 hours, when she's just in the hospital, they started taking pictures of her in her hospital bed, put it out and said, we're going to find the killer, the dealers that have supplied this killer A. The dealers that have, and we're on the hunt. So immediately, she's not even gone. And immediately there's this big sensational,
I got you. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So then we get to Raquel's on Friday night and they're handing out pictures of Leah in a coma at the door. Right. And it was incredibly shocking for us at the time. And obviously we had all been having a great time. Right. Raquel's wasn't how it was like Raquel's was the great scene and oh my God, it was amazing. No, it wasn't. it was the worst. It was the only club in Basildon that you was on a Friday night doing house music. And it was always really rough club. It wasn't a great club. And the door staff and the people running it, and Bernie King, i.e. Bernard O'Mahony, was the doorman at Raquel's. And it was a right rough hole, actually.
Was it?
And it was not the club that, it wasn't Hollywood's in Romford, and it wasn't Adlib in Southend.
Got you.
I only went there on a Friday because I was working in Basildon. It was easy money, and it was by the same promoters as the night that I was going to, which is called Perfect Virtue in Southend.
Right.
So what actually happened then? That was the end, right? So Racket, that was the end. We went in. There was nobody in the club apart from a couple of old Bill, but no police spoke to any of us.
Wow.
None.
That's really, it is fascinating. So just to go back to that chronology, and I completely take your point because it's important to get these facts straight. And I do really appreciate you joining us to do that because it is so important. But the chronology is she died in November 1995. Then the Rettendon murders followed. And people said that they, right, yeah, 2 weeks later, was it? Right, yes, because in December 1995. And then I want to introduce the third part of this story. And then after that, Brian Harvey, who was a member of E17, came out and made some comments about ecstasy. Is that correct?
So that was quite a long time afterwards, because actually, 1994 to 95 was E17, Stay Another Day was at Christmas number 1. Right, so the start of 95, before all of this has happened, E17, Christmas number 1, everybody's in love with Brian Harvey. As I said, it was boy band era, Take That, everything. They were put up and we were all in love, and he's a brilliant artist and an amazing talent and got the voice of an angel. Anyway, so it's actually not until 1997
2 years afterwards, he said his
Brian
comments.
made those comments, yeah, and that's when he got kicked out. And we'll say what I'm portraying here, as you can see, is what was actually happening was a one big, huge demonization of ecstasy, using different people, using Brian, using Leah Betts, using the Essex boys. Obviously, the Essex boys were dealing a hell of a lot, so taking them out of the game, yeah. Somebody just takes their patch, there's still same amount of dealing going on. It doesn't stop ecstasy being dealt. Nobody stopped doing ecstasy. But Paul Betts, the
father of Leah,
spent the next, he's dead now, only recently, but spent the next 30 or 28 years being the campaigner for ecstasy. So if anything happened around ecstasy, he was always asked for a comment. And he then went in, spent his next 20 years going into schools, scaring children, saying that 1A might kill you. And it doesn't, and it's not true. And meanwhile, the alcohol industry and the Red Bull industry, so Red Bull then did the Sorted campaign, which was, we're going to give you £1 million to put Leah Betts on posters saying Sorted on billboards all around. And anybody that knows this story knows the Sorted campaign, because it's the same as this Just Say No Grange Hill campaign. So this is the Sorted by Red Bull, and then into clubs goes vodka and Red Bull. And
see, this is extraordinary, the timeline you're painting here. And I think Crafty Kim has a point. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. I think that case was the demise of the rave scene, coupled with the demonization of the traveler's lifestyle. Does that resonate with you?
It did an awful lot of damage. Yeah, it really tried to. I mean, the raves, what it really did was make the rave scene go overground, which really didn't help the rave scene. Because, yeah, it did an awful lot of damage, because actually there was real, obviously on the high level dealing side. And, this whole thing has been talked about ecstasy, but why is nobody talking about coke?
Right. Okay. Got you. Because here's the thing. Hope says, and I take her point, to be honest, I don't see the problem with a father trying to stop kids taking drugs. And I take that point. Right. And surely you do as well. Right.
So I 100% believe in drug education. Right? It's the just say no does not work.
Right. Just say
It's
no.
a really pointless exercise. Like, if you ever turn around to a teenager and go, just no, don't do it, don't try it, they're going to go and try it. It's, just saying don't do drugs, kids, really, like that, we really are past that. Like, alcohol is a drug. Cannabis has been given out by the NHS for anxiety. If you go over to the US, there is so much more understanding of what's medicine, what's drugs, and what's abuse.
So Amy says, so what is she saying? That ecstasy is good for you? I don't think that's really what you're saying, are you?
In small doses.
Careful. You do not want the police on your case, sweetheart. Trust me.
I'm not. I think if people open their eyes to I would say that cocaine is an extremely dangerous drug. Ecstasy, they are pushing in the States for it to be classified for full medicinal use. In small doses. I'm not talking about go out and do loads of ecstasy and get trolleyed and do cocktails of alcohol and this and that. I'm not saying any of that, but I cannot sit here in honest truth, which I always am in honest truth, and say that it's bad for you, because in small doses, it was actually invented for marriage counselling.
Right. And also people are pointing out the fact that it is used medicinally. In fact, Sully says ecstasy is being used in therapy now for PTSD. So but the demonization still exists to today, because even I have concerns. I'm trying to make sure that none of us get in trouble. That's how deep rooted it is, though, Sasha, right?
Yeah. And because it's 30 years of media manipulation.
Yeah.
And, my last YouTube, so my dad died a couple of months ago, and I got the call, and I was doing a YouTube on ecstasy versus alcohol, and it was just gone up at that time, and that was the last time I've been on YouTube. So I'm literally on a hidden retreat at the moment, and I've just popped out of my retreat to do this.
Bless you. Thank you.
That was the last time I was online, but no, it's fine. And it is really, really good to talk about it, because I am very, very, very passionate about it, and have been wanting to talk about what happened with Leah and the real truth of it and the understanding of it, because what happened is alcohol is promoted. This drug that a little bit, have a bit of fun, you're never going to kill anybody, you're never going to hurt anybody, and you're not going to stab anybody, and you're not going to have a fight. Whereas we live in a world where alcohol is promoted so heavily, it is glorified to the absolute max. It goes with the white, and that makes the biggest amount of money on the street, and that's where some of the worst kind of dealing and the amount of money is being shifted around. They go together like peas and carrots, unfortunately. And alcohol is so heavily promoted and
taxed, as Marcuson points out. I mean, we are also talking not just about kind of like the demonization of it, but about all the finances, right, in the background. They can't tax stuff that's right.
Follow the money. I always say follow the money. Yeah. And you do, and I know you do. And that's where it is, and I do, while I'm talking about this, and I have to make sure I get this out. So there's an incredible miscarriage of justice that has gone on around this case, not just in the truth of what happened to Leah, not just in how they've used it to demonize ecstasy and rave culture and all of these different things, but on the fact that the actual perpetrators have never been, in my opinion, the actual perpetrators have never actually...
Of the murders. Two men were convicted, right? Jack Womes, wasn't it? And Michael John Steele. So they were convicted, right, of the murders on the 20th of January, 1998. I remember the Old Bailey trial. But so you're saying something's wrong with that conviction?
Yes, and anybody that is following this case, most people, 99% of people that have looked heavily into this case and know an awful lot about it, do not believe that Jack Holmes or Michael Steele were involved in the actual pulling of the trigger or the death, and that they were scapegoated. Jack Holmes is now out. Michael Steele is still in category, whatever it is, hard category 4, whatever it is, hardcore prison. He's 81 years old. They have never, both of them have always claimed their innocence. They would have been let out, as always. If they had said, we did it, they would have been let out a long time ago. But they never have. They've always claimed their innocence. Michael Steele is a hardcore guy, and it's not that they were innocent. They were involved in drug dealing. They've got bitten, but I do believe they were scapegoated. Michael Steele did get his parole finally, and everybody was like, yes, his parole was cleared and he was supposed to be released, and then it has just been blocked by the Justice Secretary.
I didn't realise, I beg your pardon, but I didn't realise there was so much controversy around the conviction. There's loads of people in the comments saying those men are innocent, well, they were 100% innocent. I didn't realise there was a controversy around the conviction.
Yeah, massive, huge. And the reason you don't is because the press, which we know is controlled, has tried to keep that side down.
Right.
There is press about it if you search, but you know what it's like with the algorithm. They really tried to keep what they Rise of the Foot Soldier, that's top of Netflix and everybody want to see that bullshit. Yeah. But the actual miscarriage of justice is the fact that these boys didn't get shot by those two guys. The families have all suffered. Everybody suffered. The families of these boys have suffered. It's not that people are innocent, but all of the injustice has happened, and the actual perpetrators and the people that are involved generally are the ones that are still making the cash out of it and are still on the street and active.
Right. I think it's so important to get this insight, right? Because you've actually changed my mind during this conversation, right? And I think that's what's important. The truth does that, doesn't it? It's like if you're able to hear new information and it computes and makes sense. I knew that there was a problem. I knew it'd become an industry, like you say, at the top of Netflix, Rise of the Foot Soldiers, blah, blah, blah. And again, we're not here glorifying drug dealers or gangsters or anything like that, but the truth is important, right? And if innocent people are serving time, there's something wrong there.
Yeah, there is, as always with these situations, the Essex police corruption and MEPO is police corruption that's involved in this case, and it is why there is so much injustice. It is well known. There's such a lot of sensation. There's policemen that were sleeping with the Essex boys' girlfriends. It is so dark. So
wow.
There's a lot of top Masonic involvements. It is these three guys were drug dealers. They were Essex white boys. They were by far the only gangsters and by far the only drug dealers. They have been used. Their death has been used, of course. They got shot dead, point blank range in the face.
Oh, that's terrible.
That doesn't glorify drug dealing, and none of it does glorify drug dealing. I am actually an advocate for legalization of many things, and it to be controlled in the right way and educated in the right way, because none of the rest works, so
no, exactly. We have to find a solution. It's like when my last guest, and we're talking about the Middle East, and it's like we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and we can't allow them. Who was it who said, the definition of madness is when you do the same thing over again and you expect a different result, right? Right. Exactly. And that's what's happening here, isn't it? Absolutely what's happening here. And the thing is, because they've solidified that narrative so much. And I see now, and Jen, I hope it now makes sense to you, that kind of like how it went from the 3 murdered men to Leah Betts to Brian Harvey, and the big and obviously SACHA is going to correct me if I'm wrong, because she's that kind of woman, which is great. But so what I understand, SACHA, the theme that joins all 3 of them was the demonization of the rave scene, the demonization of the drug, all of those different things all coming together. That's the running theme, right?
And the phone hacking scandal.
And right, got you. And I think that's probably a part 2 conversation, actually. I think that's worthy part 2 conversation. Let's organise that. Let's
I
get
have
that
got-
organised.
On my YouTube, if you go to SACHA I stream on my YouTube, I've got a playlist which has got all about this case. So everything that I've spoken about, because basically I got brought back in. I hadn't thought about it for years. And then Sky One did a Essex murders documentary. And so I got called to do that. And that came out at the start of last year. But interestingly enough, and this is for part 2, I did 2 days of filming, which they cut the whole lot apart from 1 minute. And the only minute they did put in, they got me to say something specific on WhatsApp and then just dub that over it. It was very dodgy. It was very dodgy, but we'll talk about that later. So that's how I've been brought back in. So much has happened over the last couple of years, because like with all of these cases, when people have got truth and light and come in and want to talk about truth and light, the people that don't want that start to shut it down. And,
Exactly.
And there's a lot of gangsters involved. And a lot of gangsters I know and people, and a lot of people have come in with that kind of, she's just a barmaid, what does she know? She's just a blonde horse, she's just trying to make money, la, 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 la.
Yes, it's rubbish. I mean, all of that is, this is, when, like I say, the moment I read Jen's email, I was like, Sasha knows this stuff. And she knows it a lot better and in more depth and detail than I do. And so that's why I brought you on, because I like to bring on people who are experts. And you are. But yeah, let's do that part 2. I really appreciate I think you've blown a few minds this morning, by the way. It'll take a little while for the dust to settle. Because
sorry, everyone. I hope it's all right for Monday morning.
All of that is great. It's great because I think we're in an era where we need to shake up, right? We definitely need to shake up. And this is one of those stories that, and it's quite interesting. Today has been quite a lot about, I'm looking back and reflecting on what's gone on in the 90s. I also started with the Stephen Lawrence story. So it's almost like, I wonder if there's something going on in the heavens where it's bringing it all back round again for us to deal with it properly. You know what I mean?
100%. I call it the 3-year itch, or the magic number is 3. So the magic number is 3, and it was 30 years. So everything is circular and cycler. So when there's injustices and truths that haven't come to light, by the time it gets to that 30 years, the universe is going, no, it's got
I love that. That is a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much, everybody. This is Sasha. I will make sure to put a link to her YouTube in the description at the end of this stream. Please go check out. She's done loads of reports on this. Sasha, you've been an absolute star this morning. Thank you so much, everybody. Sasha Wall, take good care of yourself. Lovely. Brilliant stuff. See, now that, Jen, I think you got your answer there, didn't you, Jen? I think you did. And just as a side note, by the way, I actually knew a young man who was involved with making a documentary for Channel 4 on the Rettendon murders. And I knew him well enough to be able to have dinner with him. This is somebody I kind of knew. And he was the partner of somebody I knew. And he jumped in front of a train after that. And I'm sure they're not related, but it's just an aside, really. So rest in peace. Rest in peace. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. I appreciate it. Great guest, says James Bond. Indeed she was. Fantastic stuff. Right. I want to talk about this Bristol livable cities, people. What the hell is going on? What is happening in Bristol? Thank you to a number of our viewers, including Sarah and Jane. Sarah said, let's see. Hi, Sonia. My name is Sarah. And she'd been watching a video by Jeff Buys Cars. She said it's very disturbing. It's about police and contractors in Bristol turning up at 3 a.m. witching hour to install roadblocks and bus gates for the 15-minute city. And Jane said something quite similar. It's a very quick email. In case you didn't know, there seems to have been a livable city installed in Bristol in the very early hours of one morning last week. There is indeed. So what is going on? Well, this month, the Green Party, which runs Bristol City Council, has been accused of carrying out ethnic cleansing on steroids by installing what has become known as racist and classist barricades under the cover of darkness with police protection. Yes, truly, with police protection. I've even got some images. Let me see if I can just bring up some images of this, because I think this is weird, right? I think this is so weird that you would do this under cover of darkness. Nothing good is happening under cover of darkness when they're installing blockades, and they've installed them in Barton Hill. And Barton Hill is considered to be one of the most impoverished parts of the UK, right? That is a reality. It's ethnically diverse, but there's a whole load of very, very poor, impoverished people of all nationalities there. Okay. And what happened was on March the 13th, people living in Barton Hill were literally horrified to kind of be woken up at 3 a.m. March 13th to council workers nailing down barricades while dozens of police officers stood guard. Some of the police were armed with tasers. There were drones going overhead, right? And it's just really weird. And what obviously the council are having to respond to this. So a Bristol City Council spokesman said in January, Bristol City Council attempted to install a traffic management system in the Barton Hill area of the city. However, the works were disrupted and police were required to attend. So what they did was they did it at night in the hope that they wouldn't have that again. Here's the thing. If you feel the need to carry out something on behalf of the council at 3 a.m. in the morning, it may be problematic. It may be problematic. And it was the first, is that right, D. Hoare? Bristol was the first British city to be named European Green Capital in 2015. It's segregation and restriction of movement, unlawful and dirty, says Alice Gorgeous. Indeed it is. And these livable neighbourhoods, by the way, the idea is that Bristol City Council has pledged to cut personal car usage by 44%. Do you know when by 2030? There's that year again. It said livable neighborhood schemes were key and would redesign streets so that they are people friendly. The problem is they're also dangerous and they also ghettoized areas. We know that. And it said proposals for a permanent scheme layout will be consulted on after 6 to 9 months of the scheme being in place. So they're testing people. And the problem is even ambulances can't get to these areas. That's part of the problem, right? But it's also an attack on small businesses and residents. This is ghettoizing the area because it contains lots of working class people, both black and white. And one man actually said that in order to take his elderly father to hospital, it involved an extra 40-minute journey. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. It's killing local businesses. We know it. This idea that it's a livable city is absolutely outrageous. And so this, at the moment, what Bristol City Council are telling us is that this is a trial, to the viewers who wrote in. But I can bet you it is none of the sort, because once they install these things, come on now, they're not going backwards. They are not going backwards on this. Get out of the city. Bristol's lovely though, Robert. It is lovely, and it would be awful, wouldn't it, for people to be driven out of their homelands because of this madness that's going on. Sully says the one-way systems have destroyed all the high streets it's being used on in Bristol. Got it? Yes, Agenda 21 and Agenda 30, Jan. Absolutely that. It's a forever trial. And Chrissy said, come on, people of Bristol, don't accept this. And that's what needs to happen, right? But the thing is that one of the other things that was noted was that these barriers have very much drawn a line between the more wealthy of Bristol and the impoverished of Bristol, right? And that's why we're talking, these are literally like dividing lines that are being drawn up like very physically in our environment. And I saw this in North Kensington around the whole Grenfell thing. I talk about this in my Grenfell documentary. Exactly the same happened, right? That's just happening right there. And that is, it was originally kind of like a very working class enclave, and then bit by bit people realized, oh my God, this is Kensington. This is a very expensive area, prime real estate, all that. And then you have people like, Michael Gove and David Cameron moving into the area, shoot up the price. And then suddenly, things like Grenfell happen, and honestly, nobody really cares. I mean, and I don't mean that in a heartless way, because I really do care. I care deeply, but those people don't care. And the people that were moving in don't care, because actually a lot of the time the flats like Grenfell were seen as a blight on the area and actually reducing the property prices for the riches. And the same is happening in Bristol. Right there. The same is happening in Bristol. It's no longer an invisible prison anymore, Sally Ann. It isn't. Concerning. Very concerning. Lots of talk. I'm moving on to the next topic. Lots of talk online, including from Rupert Lowe, who wants to ban halal meat. What about kosher, as Unity News Network keep pointing out? Why does everybody always go on about halal but not kosher, right? And but what about abattoirs in general, right? As viewer Terry sent me information, and honestly, I didn't want to look at it. And Terry said, I'm reaching out regarding a local issue in Arley, Warwickshire, disturbing story about animal abuse at a nearby abattoir. And Terry, honestly, like you, I can't watch the videos. I can't. It's enough to see the pictures, the images. It's all too horrible for me. And so what is happening is this abattoir in Arley in Warwickshire. I wonder if there's some protesters. Let me put these protesters up there. Is animals are being tortured and abused. Now, I'm going to come with it straight, right? And that is, I really get quite irritated when people go, halal meat is so wrong. We're a nation of animal lovers. Listen, you might be a dog lover and you might be a cat lover, but if you're eating a cow, you're not a cow lover. So that doesn't make you an animal lover. And this is no attack on you. And I'm not being superior or snippy just because I don't eat meat, but I'm just saying, let's be real about it, right? And that is, we are not a nation of animal lovers because we eat animals. We're a nation of dog lovers. And we're kind of a nation of cat lovers as well, but we're not a nation of animal lovers. And we need to get rid of that moniker because it's simply not true. And Terry, what happened in this abattoir is absolutely appalling. I've, seen some images of what's going on. And these workers, they're just terrorizing the animals right before they're being killed. And it was actually down to an Australian filmmaker and animals rights activist, Joey Carbstrong, who installed secret cameras. And this was a halal slaughterhouse, by the way. And they were going, because there's even laws which govern that, right? And the imagery is just horrible. And so now it's 3 workers have been sacked. And the footage formed the basis of a report by Jenny Mason, associate lecturer at the University of Winchester. But yeah, so the abattoir is now under investigation and the workers have been sacked. And it's like, come on, it's unconscionably unbearable for me, right? I get it. But I also don't judge people who eat meat, right? Because I do believe that there's enough judgment taking place in this world. What you do really shouldn't be my business. I have to take care of my area and I'm trying to do the very best I can. But nonetheless, there are still laws within abattoirs and they must be followed because the idea is to minimize the suffering as much as possible of animals. Although I don't know how that is possible when you have a pile of sheep who are all lined up and they know what's happening to them, right? So I'm not sure how you can minimize the suffering of animals, but nonetheless, this is awful. We need to be really careful about it. And I really ask that people think more critically. So when you get somebody like a popularist leader like Rupert Lowe, who is popularist, and I think he just wakes up in the morning, he just fires off a load of tweets that he knows is going to get him a load of likes. But action, Rupert, dear, action. And so I think that Rupert also needs to acknowledge the fact that kosher animals are being killed in exactly the same barbaric way. But it is interesting that Rupert only wants us to focus on halal, which obviously affects Muslims, and not kosher, which affects Jews. I think that might tell you a great deal. My kids eat meat. I don't, each to their own. Jackie, I buy meat for my dog. I buy chicken. I cook chicken for my dog. I break it out with my hands. I can't be a hypocrite about it. I say we have to take care of our own areas, but there still has to be some standards. There still has to be some standards when it comes to killing animals. There still has to be some, right? Still has to be some. Right. Said my piece there. What else do I want to talk about? What else? It's 10:47, kids. This is really silly. This is absolutely silly. And the thing is that in order for us to all to live together, we need to respect, right? We need to respect. And I'm not a Christian, right? I'm not a Christian, but I do acknowledge that England is a Christian country. England is a Christian country. I mean, that is the origins of England, right? But a primary school has scrapped its annual Easter celebration and service in order to respect diverse religious beliefs. This is at Norwood Primary School in Eastleigh, Hampshire. And head teacher Stephanie Mander wrote the letter to the parents, explained that this is because of the state school's respect for diversity and its aim to create a more inclusive atmosphere. I would argue that probably a lot of parents who are more diverse at that school, I bet they're like, oh God, no, you're putting the spotlight on us again. A lot of the time, this is well-meaning middle-class white folk who are doing all this stuff, right? I've met so many middle-class white activists who were doing stuff. BLM was, Black Lives Matter, was populated by well-meaning white middle-class activists. But this is not the way to create kind of like a cohesive society, right? Easter is Easter in the UK, whether you're religious or not. And I remember being part of an Easter bonnet parade as one example. And in fact, I walked past the local primary school yesterday and they're advertising their Easter egg hunt. So it's really poor. I'm going to read you a little bit of her letter. She's an idiot, obviously. As we approach the spring season, I would like to inform you about an important update regarding our school's traditional Easter celebrations. After careful consideration and discussion with our school community, we have decided not to hold the Easter bonnet parade or the Easter service this year. The decision has been made in the spirit of inclusivity and respect for the diverse religious beliefs represented within our school community. And all of that is good. All of that is good. But you still have to acknowledge, it's ridiculous. It's like, I mean, are they going to scrap Christmas next? These are huge festivals in England. They are part of our culture, whether you are religious or not. And to say that you're going to scrap them is going to create more problems than it will resolve. It will. This is a Christian country. Scaled, is that it? What's that? Disgusting. It's frustrating, Marco. It's frustrating because I think that stuff like this creates more problems than it resolves, because it makes it look as if those Muslims and whoever else are uppity. But a lot of the time, this is literally white middle class people who are virtue signaling. I bet Miss Manda is white. What's the bet? Easter is pagan anyway. You expect this in London, but Hampshire, really? I know. Hampshire, really? They're idiots. And Jan says it has a poor Ofsted report. Is that fact? Interesting. Now, Siobhan, I think that is exactly the comment right there. So does that mean the teachers won't be having 2 weeks Easter break holiday? I bet you they damn well are. So they're still celebrating it. Just don't celebrate it at school. This is pushing everything under the rug. And this is not going to bode well for a cohesive society. No, it won't. Talking about which, Claire Stevens says there's loads of adverts to do with Ramadan on YouTube. She says, I watch a lot of YouTube videos and like your show, they contain adverts, but is it just me that has noticed that most adverts at the moment are Ramadan ones? I haven't actually seen any Ramadan adverts, to be honest with you, Claire, but you clearly have. I feel it's been rammed down my throat. So just to turn that on its head, do you think that some people could say that Easter is being rammed down their throat? And also, what does it matter? Because this is a Christian country. I mean, this is a Christian country. So part of our culture is to acknowledge these holidays. But yeah, I suspect the teachers won't. But I take your point, Claire. I take your point. Each their own, of course, she says, when it comes to religious belief. I think, but if they were met with other religions being advertised, I think, wouldn't it be so triggered? And well, we've seen that, haven't we? We have actually seen that there's been uproar. Oh, my lights have just gone out. Why has my light just gone out? Did everybody just see that light just go out? And that's weird because they're plugged in and they're on batteries. Love thy neighbor. No, Vicky, you don't need to be religious to uphold our cultural festivals. And I think that AHMED is probably one of the people who would uphold our Christian festivals, who was on earlier. And Jan wants to know if the shop's going to stop selling Easter eggs. And all of this interesting stuff. I see that let me move on. Snow White movie, absolute panned, no shocker there, and for a blooming good reason. And let me just bring in an imagery here, because they are absolute virtue signaling lunatics around all of this. Let me just get an image, if I can, just to talk a little bit more about this. Snow White, of course, it's the remake of the 1937 classic. The company's the original Snow White was the company's first full-length animated feature ever. And what they've done with this is they've brought in Rachel Ziegler to play Snow White. Rachel Ziegler is of Colombian origin. Now, again, Snow White was literally named because her skin was said to be as white as snow. And they've retold the story, and they're saying that she's now called Snow White because she was found as a baby in the snow. Then on top of that, they have the ghastly Gal Gadot. That's how she pronounces it. And she, of course, is just horrible individual. Her Hollywood star of fame was I think laid down a couple of weeks ago, and it's already been defaced because people know what she's like. She promotes absolute Zionism. And in fact, I believe that she was a former soldier. Yes, she is. I believe she was a former soldier as well, but she is now a huge Hollywood star. So aside from the fact that people don't like these two characters, and they've been saying things like, you know, the first film was made in 1937, and obviously so, and, you know, the women don't want to be rescued anymore and don't want to have Prince Charmings and anything like that. Look, women don't need to be rescued, right? But I think people do want us, if we're going to do remakes, they want us to stick faithfully to the story. And these people aren't. Anyway, it's absolutely bombed. It's absolutely bombed. This is an absolute turkey for Disney. And there is a Prince Charming, by the way, albeit downgraded in the movie. The Seven Dwarfs, whole other controversy. They ended up doing animation of the Seven Dwarfs. There have been budget and creative issues. It has cost over $270 million. They haven't even got a quarter of that back since its release. They're in trouble. Yes, Greg, what they've done is they've changed the so it is still supposed to be a kind of Prince Charming character, right? That's what Disney said. It's still supposed to be a Prince Charming character, but it's not in the traditional sense. It's not waking her up or anything like that. And I loved the original film. I literally did, right? And I understand all the problems with Disney. I've written extensively about Disney and the problems with Disney and, you know, the agendas with Disney. But as a child, I really loved that film. But I think we're all sick and tired of these people taking historic performances and rewriting them. We also don't want to be preached to, says Rachel. Disney is full of symbolism, Robert. There's more symbolism. Even if I had a show which started today and went on till Friday, I'd still be covering the ruddy symbolism of a Disney movie. Anyway, it's bombed and it deserves to. Thank you to our wonderful donators as ever, to Jade, to Arnie, to True. I like that name, True. Isn't that wonderful? Behind the scenes coming out this week, going to Liverpool, live streaming outside the Lucy Letby inquiry. If you have donated to Wake Up, you let me know, even whether it's on coffee or chat, because I can't get your email address. So please email me and I'll send you a copy of the video. And Cavan said, Sonia, have you ever thought about having a couple of promotions on your channel? Obviously, only ones you believe in, you get some revenue from, and give your family and us a discount code. I have, Cavan, and we are currently kind of, I get a lot of offers, and some of them are dodgy as anything, right? Dodgy as anything. You don't want me to be promoting dodgy stuff, but it is quite hard. It is really hard, but we're currently rooting through them. We have been doing so for some time. So yeah, that is absolutely on the agenda. Cheeky, did they? They changed the bird into a black vulture. Shut. No, don't. Yes, absolutely. Same with music and all those covers. Yeah, right. Why can't they make new fairy tales about brown people, etc.? Why remake old films badly? Says Soul Sound. I agree. My phone is still in a queue over an hour to 7 Trent Water. What's happening, Em? What's happening? I love yourself, Dr. Robert. Yes, I do. Right, we're going to end the show, people. It's interesting to me, since COVID or since C19, that fast that was, that's when I witnessed the most amount of people who have been kind of like hijacking the truth movement in order to push their toxic agendas or their toxic selves. I was one of those people back in 2019 that was standing up very strong against the whole kind of cancel culture and woke nonsense. And it seemed utterly wrong to me. And I fought against it hard. However, there were many people, let's call them the GB News bigots, who latched onto the woke idea because it was a way to force through their prejudice while looking as if they were standing against totalitarian madness. But bit by bit, I started to really dislike the type of people who were attaching themselves to it. I may agree on one issue here or there with some people, but I can never, ever be aligned with the likes of a Dan Wootton or a Lawrence Fox or any of those other people who claim to be about the truth, but really they're pushing their own agenda. So I just wanted to say that I do not align with these people. And the reason I want to say that is because I've had some emails over the weekend and it's funny. Some people were like, were you angry on Friday? I was a bit angry, but other people were like, I like seeing you angry. And so you can't please all the people all the time or whatever. But one of the things that I was angry about is the kind of really creepy, horrible people who are claiming to be about the truth, but they're not at all. They are bigots in all different shapes and sizes, right? And I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of that, and I don't want to be aligned with that, which is why I don't work in cliques. I don't work in groups. Everybody knows that about me. And it's not because I'm not a team player. It's because I'm really careful who I align with. Anyway, 5 years on, I've realized it's absolutely time to separate myself even more from these people. And one way to do it is to be less on the main social media platform for this. And that is X, formerly Twitter. It is the most barbarically racist, bigoted platform ever under the watch of Elon Musk. And I can't imagine how that could possibly happen, given that his own father said that Elon was always really friendly with his black servants back in South Africa. But the point is that X has allowed some of the most awful, toxic people to come together, and I'm not like that, and I'm not part of it, and so I'm spending less and less of my time on there. I wanted to just say that in response to some of the emails I've received, and one person wrote in and said, please could you be angry more often, because I love seeing it, you get that passionate. But the thing is that I only get angry when, well, things just kind of like wind me up. But also I try and be a bit more balanced than that, right? I try and be a bit more balanced than that, right? But what I wanted to say as our end topic, right, was I wanted to pick up on something that was mentioned on Friday, and that is, what would we tell our younger and older selves? And I thought on Friday that what I would tell my younger and older self was basically the same thing, and that is to keep on. This is your path, stick with it. And it's something I need to do to remind myself on a regular basis, given the level of opposition I face doing what I do. And then I realized that there was something else I wanted to tell my younger self, and I want to share that with you because it may resonate. And this is what I would like to tell my younger self, and that is, you are stronger than that which opposes you. I've always been driven by a sense of justice. I don't like injustices in any form, or imbalances in this world where some die for want of heat or eat and some have gold bath taps. I don't like that level of disparity. And before I leave this world, I want to influence a change where the world is more fair. I appreciate that's a grand and lofty idea, but I've always felt the same way, and I can't see me changing that now. So that's what I would tell myself, no matter how alone you may feel, no matter who you may encounter, no matter the attacks and threats, no matter how strong, no matter how rich, no matter how influential they are, no matter how obsessive they are in wanting to bring you down, no matter how psychopathic they are in attacking you, what you believe in and what you stand for is stronger than their will to want to stop you. And how do I know this? Well, I'm here, aren't I? And it reminds me of something my big brother Bern once said to me. It was in the 90s. I was a music journalist, having just come home after a particularly hairy assignment in America. And I was writing a feature about people who have been killed fighting to expose powerful people and to reveal the truth. And he said to me, Bab, they can kill a person, but they can't kill what that person stands for. And that stayed with me ever since. And I maintain that. And that's why when people have warned me to be careful about speaking out about this and that, when I poked one hornet's nest or another, but the reality is that I do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway, as the great book says. And I have learned that the truth is more powerful than any amount of attacks. And that's why I would remind my younger self that while the path ahead may be rocky at times and people may disagree with me and try and stop me, absolutely no one, and I mean that, absolutely no one who tried to stop me was ever a match for me. Not ever. And I would say it because the results speak for themselves. So yes, I am stronger than that which has opposed me. And that is what I would tell my younger self. And thank you for being here. Thank you, Christine. Thank you for being here, all of you. I wouldn't go so far as say I'm hard as nails. I'm not hard because I'm soft at the center of me, but I could be tough. I can be tough. Thank you all. Thank you all. It is a hornet's nest. Oh, yes, it is. Absolutely. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all to our live chat. Obviously, thank you if you're watching on playback. Thank you to our lovely mods. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. And I want to end on a quote, because that's what we do around here. And it's by Margaret Mitchell. And she said, burdens are for shoulders strong enough to carry them. So there you go. You take good care of yourself. I will see you Wednesday for our Wednesday hangout. Oh, I think I might have somebody on Wednesday to talk about free energy. So fingers crossed. Have a beautiful Monday and Tuesday. Lovely people. And I will see you Wednesday. Thank you for being here. Lots of love to you all. Take good care of yourself. See you Wednesday, folks. Thank you.